I spent the second half of my life realizing what weird of a species Homo sapiens actually is, because we, through all our devices in our pockets, we send messages to the other side of the planet at the speed of light, but we struggle to truly know the people living right next to us. We dream about reaching other planets, and we slowly destroy the one we already have. We invent new artificial life forms, and we erase thousands of species that inhabited this earth alongside us. We are brilliant, and we are unbelievably foolish. And the more time I spent watching this paradox, the more it became clear that if our current way of being could create a thriving earth for everybody, it already would have. And since it hasn't, we need to do something entirely different. We need to be different. So today I'd like to call forth a journey humanity has never taken before. But first of all, why are we like this? How can one species be so brilliant and so destructive at the same time? In order to understand this, we have to look at the deeper principle of how a human being actually works. The psychiatrist and philosopher Ian McGilchrist has spent decades studying how our brain shapes our experience of the world. And his work points to something profound. We, as a species, Homo sapiens, we have two fundamentally different ways of knowing, ways of being in the world, and they are rooted in the two hemispheres of our brain. The left hemisphere is narrow and analytical and focused. It breaks things down, it categorizes them, it manipulates them, and it builds with them. And this skill is what we commonly call intelligence. The right hemisphere, in contrast, is broad, intuitive, relational. It sees context and meaning and depth and connection, and the living whole, so to say. And this is what we call wisdom. So intelligence, our left hemisphere, is here to solve problems, to get things done. And our right hemisphere, wisdom, is here to choose which problems are actually worth solving. But when I look into the world, I see almost everybody leaning to one of these sides. We have the left hemisphere people and we have the right hemisphere people. And they play the game of intelligence or they play the game of wisdom. The game of intelligence optimizes for power, money, status, achievement, influence. I recently asked ChatGPT who the most successful players at this game are, who are the MVPs at the game of intelligence, and it listed Xi Jinping, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the usual suspects. And they possess huge intelligence, but not a lot of wisdom. And I wouldn't trust the fate of our world to these guys. But there's a second group, the people playing the game of wisdom. These are the spiritual seekers, the healers, the environmentalists. They feel deeply the pulse of life. And they value compassion and harmony. But a lot of them reject the left hemisphere entirely because money is evil and power corrupt and influence impure. So that's the dilemma of the right hemisphere of wisdom, that it knows the more beautiful world, but is fundamentally incapable of bringing it into existence because it lacks the power to do so on its own. And I played both of these games myself quite intensely. I started with the game of intelligence. As a kid, I loved winning football, and then later all sorts of trading card games where I made it to the German finals. And then as a young adult, I quit university, built a 7-figure business, led 30 plus employees. So on paper, you could say I was successful, but inside, I felt increasingly hollow. And that's why I swung to the other side, the game of wisdom. I quit everything. I became a father, I softened, and I let in the full weight of the meta crisis. And for the first time, life felt right, but I also felt powerless. And that's the inversion that drives the destruction of life at scale. Those who hold power often lack the values needed to steward it wisely, and those who hold values of truth, beauty, and goodness often lack the power needed to shape the systems that define our world. And after playing these two games, it became obvious that there is no future, not for me, not for Homo sapiens, if we keep choosing between intelligence and wisdom, because both of these games, they fail on their own. And this truth hit me hardest 3 years ago after a heart-opening plant medicine ceremony where I watched my son Leo sleeping, and I was devastated by the thought that he and his generation will inherit a fucked up world while I stood there powerless to do anything about it. And in that moment, I remembered the old Robert, the always optimistic, if you can dream it, you can do it, entrepreneur who found solutions for every problem. And I realized I wasn't broken. I had simply developed the other side, the other part of being human. 2 decades of intelligence and then a sudden surge of wisdom, but separated. And that's when I realized integration is the only path forward. Not intelligence alone, not wisdom alone, not the oscillation between them. We need both, fully integrated at the same time. So, a new game became necessary, both for myself as well as for us as a species. A game where intelligence and wisdom work together, where money, power, technology, influence is used to bring more truth, beauty, and goodness into the world. And that's the game of the custodian. A custodian is someone who strives to fulfill their highest potential, not for ego, but for service. A custodian still wants to be influential, fit, and attractive, like all the things the world rewards, but not for their own sake. A custodian wants these things because they expand the capacity to serve life. So today, I will step into this new identity. The identity of the custodian. The identity we collectively as a species must transition into if we want a future on our planet. Because if intelligence and wisdom don't come together, AI, or the small elite who controls it, will extract everything that's left of Earth and rule a world nobody wants to live in. And then fly to Mars and repeat the same story. To prevent that future, I will make a vow today. I vow to grow into my full physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual potential. I vow to become so good at the current game of power by uniting intelligence with wisdom that I can outplay the sophisticated left-brainers and build life-enhancing companies that make the extractive ones obsolete, because nobody wants to buy from or work at them anymore. I vow to become the best custodian I can be. And yet, making a vow is not enough. Because if I have to truly become this version of myself, I need to train. Because despite everything I've lived through, I'm still far away from the custodian I aim to be. But if my life's path taught me one thing, through the game of football, through card games, the game of entrepreneurship, through every game I ever played, it's this. There is no better way to grow than by stepping into the arena, by testing myself, by measuring my capabilities against other practitioners. Because it's in the arena where my own shortcomings are revealed. The places where I'm invited to train, to evolve, to move closer to who I can become. So we created an arena, one that is not about winning or outperforming others, but about becoming someone who can serve the thriving of life now and into the indefinite future. Not just a little bit, not just locally, but massively on a global scale. Because nothing less can be the goal of a custodian. So, today, together with you, I will step into this arena.
Here we go.
For the Custodian Games. A new game for humanity. Because the previous two no longer work. A game where intelligence and wisdom must work together. Where the sharpness of our mind and the depth of our heart synchronize. Where every match is a mirror, and every quest is a moment of truth. This is a new cultural sport. A training ground for the kind of humans the future depends on. Welcome to the Custodian Games.